Good morning everybody, my name is Chloe. Welcome back to my channel. I do reading, writing, sometimes lifestyle vlogs, but today we are doing my favorite type of video to do, and that is my 2025 reading wrap up for the year. And not only is this just like my favorite type of video to watch, my favorite type of video to make, but also this marks exactly a year since I started really taking this channel seriously, and I've gotten a ton of new subscribers, so thank you guys so much for coming on this journey with me if you've been here since my last 2024 reading wrap up, and if you haven't, welcome. It's nice to meet ya. I hope you stick around, but that was just me turning on my laptop because today we have 45 books to talk about, and I know that doesn't seem like a lot compared to what a lot of other people read, but up until quite recently, I was in school. I went straight through college through to grad school, and I never really had a lot of time to read. So in these past 2 years since being out of school, I think last year, I can't remember exactly how many I read. I think it was maybe around 30. I can't remember. But this year's 45, and we're just gonna see if my reading just goes up, and up every year. But yes. Let's get started, shall we? So I have all the books around here. You might be able to see the edges of them. I don't obviously have every single book that I read because that's 45 books. That's a lot of books. And also, I'm a big Libby girl. I love Libby. I love reading on my phone. That's something that a lot of people, my friends, ask me, how do I read so many books? Hello, Tora. The answer is I use Libby a lot, and I also I don't have a problem with reading on my phone versus reading on a Kindle, just because I was a Wattpad girl, sue me, but reading the Kindle app on my phone just makes me feel like I'm reading Wattpad again, so it really works for me. Also, something that I try to do is if I get a Libby loan, and I'm trying to get it read by the 2 weeks, I'll try to read 10% a day, and I usually find that if nothing else, I'm gonna get it done in 10 days, or if I really get into it, I'm gonna read it a lot faster. So that's just a little disclaimer, I guess, but if I don't have the physical book with me, I will put it kind of up in the corner, which editing me hates that when I say that I'm gonna do that, but I am. And then if I wanna talk about something, I like to use my hands to swing my arms around and tap and chat, so I will be using my little Kindle with my Momofu stand. Is that what it's called? He's cute. My friend Celine bought him for me. Let's go! So my first book that I read of the year, which is crazy because I did not think that this is the first book that I read this year, was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and we're just gonna lay down the law right now. I am an Ali Hazelwood girl. I've never really gotten into Emily Henry. I've never really gotten into Abby Jimenez because Miss Hazelwood does it for me. Now those two authors are on my list of books that I do need to read, but she just scratches an itch in my brain, and if you've watched any other video on this channel, you know that you don't need me to keep talking about how much I love Ali Hazelwood. But that being said, I am going to, this video is going to kind of be like a go watch this video, go watch that video, because I do a lot more in-depth stuff on certain books and authors that I really love. So I did make an Ali Hazelwood ranking video that I'm going to either figure out if I can put a little link to it right there, or it'll be in the description. But please go watch that if you want to see my full thoughts on Not in Love. But I gave this a 4.5 stars. Definitely not my favorite of her books, just because the nature of it, I get more into this in the video, but they meet on a dating app just with the intent to sleep together. Things go wrong, but then things go right, and they end up falling in love. And again, even though this is probably, I think, my 6th favorite, I can't remember the ranking, but this is pretty low on her list for me, but I still give it a 4.5. It'll still do what you want it to do, and Eli Kilgore, the man that you are, just all of her heroes, her male leads, are I can't think about them too much because it makes me sad that men like them don't exist in real life. Yeah, she's just gonna hit for me every time, I fear. I don't actually. I'm excited for whatever she releases next. But speaking of next, the next book that I read in 2025 was Beautiful World, Where Are You? By Sally Rooney. This was my first ever Sally Rooney, and I don't think that like the lack of quotation marks, that didn't really bother me. I don't know, it didn't take me out of the story like a lot of people say that it does. I loved it. It was my second book of the year and my first 5-star read. I just really felt like the relationship, I can't remember the two main characters' names. This is on my like I want to reread. But I just felt like the girl, like the way that it portrayed like girlhood and like female friendships was so realistic. Like I distinctly remember that one of the characters, the two girls like get into a fight and then one of them goes upstairs and she's upstairs, she's like seething. I mean, like, why did I start that fight? And then she hears like her friends having fun downstairs and she's like, shit, like getting FOMO, and then she goes downstairs and then she starts another fight, like even though she doesn't want to. I'm like, that, she's so me. I can't believe I can't remember her name, but I just remember really enjoying reading it. And you know, I don't know, I'm just gonna put a blanket statement here. There might be some spoilers in this video, so if there is, I am gonna say like spoiler because I don't want to give a spoiler for every single book. So just kind of be listening for that if you don't want me to spoil a book that you really liked, or that you really want to read. But I will say, I am not a hater of a pregnancy trope. I'm really not. And I actually really liked the way that it ended with pregnancy. But I don't know, I just didn't hate that. And I know a lot of people, like when I was reading through the reviews on Storygraph when I finished it, were like, loved it up until that. But I'm not a hater of it. I rather enjoy it, actually. But yeah, wasn't super popular. That part wasn't super popular with other people, popular with me. I did give it 5 stars, and I think that is on my to reread list. So the third and final book that I read in January was Notes of a Crocodile, and I gave this 2.5 stars, and I just didn't get it. This is one of those books that I think you need to like sit down with like a fine-tooth comb and like go through and analyze and really use your like, you know, thinking brain, really use your critical analysis brain. And I just fear I didn't expect that, which I don't know why. Like, I'm pretty sure this is like a pretty significant book for like the LGBTQ community in Taiwan. And I think that too, the fact that it was translated literature and like it was literary fic, I think that was just like two things working against me. Yeah, it just didn't really work for me. And I feel like now that I'm saying this, I'm getting like deja vu, but this feels like one that if I was ever going to reread, then I would really need to spend some time and focus and devotion to it, which I just don't have time for. But I have a few friends that I feel like they might enjoy it more. You know what I mean? But yeah, this year really taught me that what I like to do is I like to read what I consider like a fun book, and I like to kind of alternate it with like a more serious book. And that can be like, you know, something lit fic, like something more high fantasy versus like romance and romantasy. And so a lot of the books that you'll see on here, like my lit fic books, I read them because I was like, my brain's turning to mush. Let's read something that's gonna make me critically think. And then I'm just really bad at thinking critically about the pieces of work that I read, which is something that I want to get better at in 2026, is what I will say. So that is the 3 books that I read for January. So the next books that I read in February, genuinely, and this is dramatic because I am a 26-year-old woman, genuinely, I feel like altered the course of my life. And if that's good or bad remains to be seen. But the fact that I read these at the beginning of February. I actually think I started these at the end of January, so then it bled into February. This was pretty much my entire February. and I'm still thinking about it, January of 2026, that really, really says something. And I've said this before, but I think if I had read this when I was a teenager, like I read a different book when I was a teenager, I can't wait to talk about that at the end, but I genuinely think that would have changed the course of my life. And what am I talking about? This is so dramatic. I'm talking about the All for the Game series by Nora Sakavic. I gave these all a varying level of 4.5 stars to 5 stars. They do not deserve that. Like, it is the most ridiculous, I don't want to say stupid, but like outlandish series that you can imagine, but it just felt so nostalgic, I guess, for really just like the time of Wattpad and the time of Tumblr. And I just really admire that this author she wrote whatever the hell she wanted to write. She was releasing this on Tumblr, and she created a community of people that were like, hell yeah. And I'm one of those people that says, hell yeah. You'll see that, you know, I have a different cover for the Vauxhall Court. Shameless plug, I did also do a video where I was trying to create book sleeves for my books. This is the only one that worked out. I don't know why this is the only one that worked out. I did my measurements incorrectly, but I want to make one for every single of the other books. But I'm also not going to get into, I could honestly rant about these books for so long. I'm not going to get into it. If you would like, there's another video of me watching it, which I actually think is the most popular video on my channel right now, which is actually insane. I really didn't think that out of everything that I had made, I did not think that that was going to be the one that I consistently see on the top of my analytics every single week, every single day. It's a lot, okay? But I think the reason I'm lumping them all in is because if you want to see how I react to the rest of the videos or the rest of the books, go watch that video. But I genuinely think if I had just read the first trilogy that, you know, ends in a nice little bow, of course there's some loose ends, but if I had read that, I would have been totally fine. Like, I would have been a normal fucking human being. Unfortunately, Miss Sakavic decided to come out of the woodwork, and about 3 months before I found like this series, which is also crazy because I have a screenshot in my like photos that I was looking through when I was like on the airplane going through my photos from May of, I want to say 2022, of somebody recommending this series, and I didn't read it. It was just like on my TBR, and then I finally did it, and I just think, I wonder what my life would have been like had I read that when I was 22. But anyways, I think if I had read the first trilogy and not moved on to Jean's trilogy, I would have been a normal human being. But unfortunately, I did read The Sunshine Court and fell in love with Jean, and then as I was reading these, the second book, which one's that? The Golden Raven, came out in February, and so I read that, and now I've been chomping at the bit to get this last book. I am so excited, and I need it. I would say I need it to come out so my suffering can end, but of course, now we know that we're getting a prequel and a sequel in Kevin's point of view, and I'm a 26-year-old back in the throes of fan fiction. Like, I had completely moved on from fan fiction and was getting on with my adult life until I read this book last year. And, you know, for better or worse, I told myself I wasn't going to talk for very long about that series, but it's already been almost 5 minutes. But that's all you're getting from me. That's all you're getting from me right now, because you can go watch my other videos if you want to see more of my like real-time reactions. My 9th book of the year, pivoting quite a bit, was Bound to Fall by A.K. Kajino, and I gave that 4 stars. And I loved the Villains and Virtues series, like the first 3, The Throne in the Dark. I cannot remember the other ones off the top of my head, but those were some of my favorite books of 2025. Again, if you want to see me talk about those, you can go to my wrap up for 2024. Sorry, did I say 2025? I meant 2024. But this was, so there's a main 3, and then there's 2 spin-off books. So Bound to Fall was one of the spin-off books, and an underrated couple dynamic that you really don't see enough are two idiots in love, and that is what we had. And I feel like in the era of, what did I call it, like a badass female main character and a shadow daddy male main character, just two idiots trying to like figure out the dumb fantasy world that they're in, it was just very refreshing. That being said, I did feel like I wasn't the biggest fan of how the romance of this one played out, but that's also me comparing it to The Throne in the Dark, like the main trilogy, because they had 3 books. Okay, so Amma and Damien had 3 books to kind of, you know, get their feelings sorted out, like so many obstacles, and then they finally end up together, versus they only, I think, oh my god, what are their names? Maybe Celeste and something. Anyways, this main couple only had 1 book to get it done. And I also felt like a detriment to my reading experience was that I had read that series 3 months, 2-ish months before I read this book, and there's a pretty, not intense, but it's like a pretty in-depth magic system that comes back in this one. And so I think the fact that I had left that world and forgotten the magic system, that was a little bit, I don't want to say detrimental, that's not like the correct word, but that didn't help my reading experience. I think if I had read it straight through, I maybe would have enjoyed it and understood it a little bit more, but you know, the romance was the main part, and it was still good. It was still good. So there is a 5th book in the series, but I'm not sure if I'm ever gonna get to that, really, even though it is on my TBR. So we'll see, but that was February. All right, now on to March. So I have another one of my the book sleeves I tried to create. Please ignore the little white bits at the top and bottom. I measured incorrectly. I still don't know what I could have done better. I don't know. Anyways, so I read Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake, and I gave it a 4-star. I'm pretty liberal, I think, with my star ranking now that I think about it, but I also kind of feel life's too short to read bad books, so that's why you'll probably see that most of the books that I end up talking about are ranked at least over 3 stars and are ranked pretty highly. But anyways, so I think I was just expecting something life-changing, and I didn't exactly get that, but that's my own fault for taking a TikTok recommendation that said that this was an amazing romance that was going to change how I viewed love, and thinking that that was actually going to happen. It didn't. I am not the biggest fan of love stories where the 2 main characters become like consumed with one another. Maybe if I had ever had a boyfriend, I would feel different, but I don't think I would. I just wasn't a big fan of it. I wasn't a big fan of Reagan. I found myself able to root for Aldo more than I could for her. It just wasn't my personal cup of tea, but I did like making the cover for it. And I'm not gonna like get rid of it because it was a gift from a friend, because I told her that it was a book that I wanted to buy. That's like a curse that I have put upon me, is that, and another reason why I read so many Libby books, I find that if I just go and I purchase a book, because I've seen people like review it and that they really like it, I for some reason don't end up liking it. And so now I've like figured out that I actually need to read a book and then I'll purchase it if I want to reread it or if I want to lend it to people. I feel like I talk about that so much on this channel, but I feel like this was just another example of the curse hitting me, where I bought the book before reading it and it wasn't my favorite. That being said, I still give it a 4 stars because I really like the writing style, and there were parts of it that I did enjoy. The more that I sit on it, the more that I'm not sure if I give it a 4 stars, but I feel like something about the end, I think, revived it for me. But that was in March and I really can't remember. So that was Alone with You in the Ether. Okay, so I'm kind of excited to talk about these next 2, but not because I love them so much, just because I want to talk about them. The first one, number 11, the 11th book that I read this year, was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and I gave this bad boy a 3 stars. That's also something I didn't preface this at the beginning, but when I'm reading, I think I've said this in a billion other videos, but my scale starts at 3 stars. Like, I will always go into a book giving it the benefit of the doubt. Like, you can wow me, you can disappoint me. And then from there, it like slides up and down as different events happen. So this went down quite a bit, but then brought itself back up to 3 stars. I personally felt like this story was just doing too much. Like, I loved the concept of the Romeo and Juliet in like 1920s Shanghai. And the thing about me is I'm not like a huge retellings fan. Like, I've never really been interested in like the Romeo and Juliet retellings, like Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast retellings. Like, I don't know, that doesn't really interest me that much. But I thought that the concept was cool, you know? I think that in itself was a really cool concept. And I went into it thinking that the relationship was going, I need to swing something around. I went into it thinking that the relationship between like the gangs and like that was gonna be, it was a really big main focus. I think what I'm trying to get at is that, here's a spoiler, I guess not really, you meet it in the first chapter. The main villain is like a scary big insect monster that infects people and makes them kill themselves. Like, rip out their own throats. I just felt like that was doing too much. Like, yes, give us the gangs, give us the conflict. I was hoping it'd be more like political, you know what I mean? But the fact that that was the big bad, I just felt was doing a lot. And I did not like Juliet in the slightest. That was kind of, I think they were meant to be like 19, 20. They were meant to be pretty young. And to be fair, I know that the author wrote this, I think, when she was in college. So, like, from experience, like, you write about people who are ages like similar to you know what I mean? Or especially like, I think when you're younger, you want to see yourself in a heroine. So I just felt like they were so young, and I just felt like she was childish and she was bratty, and she had this whole like attitude of, I was sent to New York like for protection, but I came back hardened and like a badass, and I just felt like she was doing too much. And I just really didn't like her, and I felt that Roma was very like a very passive character somehow. But what made me keep reading is I loved the side characters. Like, I loved oh my god, what was her name? Okay, well, obviously I think it was Kathleen. I loved her, like her whole like story about being like trans in this time. And I loved Benedict and Marshall. And here's a spoiler I'm gonna give, because it was the only reason I read the second book. And that was because, so at the end, Juliet kills Marshall, and Benedict is like, what the fuck? And they're all like, oh my god, Juliet betrayed us, like, we'll never trust her again. But then you find out in the last chapter, Marshall's still alive, and Juliet's like now protecting him and hiding him. And that was the only reason I read my 12th book of the year, which was Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong, which I gave a 4.25 stars, because I genuinely did think it was so much better. I think, you know, if there's a few books that it's like, if you don't like the first book, keep reading, but if like you have to give it a chance, and this is one of those series that I think if you didn't like the first book, give it more of a chance. Like for like the Foxhole Court, like if you read the first one and you don't like it, you just simply don't get it, babe, like move on. But this one, I would definitely give it another chance. I like went from almost DNFing These Violent Delights to really like blowing through Our Violent Ends. And I thought Our Violent Ends, I thought it was written much better. I thought Juliet's character was a lot better. Like, I just think that, I think These Violent Delights might have been Chloe Gong's first published work, and I think that I can tell the way that her like writing style like developed and matured. I really liked it a lot better. The politics. This one had the politics that I really wanted, where it was like how that, like, you know, Shanghai was being overtaken by a bunch of people from Europe and French people and like even like Roma's gang, like they're also, you know, white people that have taken over like a section of Shanghai. I just felt like the politics of this world were so much more interesting, and then boom, we'd get reminded of the insect monster, and I was like, why is this the big bad? And I think in the end it did end up being a white man, shocker, but like, as it should. But I just felt like the weird insect monster, every time I was like, there had to be something different. But I get her. Like, as, like, I think I've talked about this in some of my writing videos, that sometimes you just go with like an idea and you're just like so devoted to it, even when I think your idea takes off without you, or like it creates like its own like shape. There's some things that don't serve you anymore, but it's hard to get rid of. I can see how it would be hard to completely change this, but that's not me trying to give writing advice to a published author. But I thought the characterization in this book was a lot better. And then Benedict and Marshall just had me kicking and screaming, like kicking my little feet when Benedict realizes that he was like in love with Marshall, and that's why he's so broken up about his death, not just because he loved him like a brother, because no, he loved him. And then when he's finally like reunited with him, but then that also at the end we find out that Marshall is actually like an official son, even though like for their like almost entire life like he acted like he was an orphan instead of the fact that he ran away from home. I feel like that should have been focused on so much more, but I really liked it. I really liked this book, and I also feel like I'd completely forgotten that it was a Romeo and Juliet retelling until the very end when they both go, you know what I mean? But like, spoiler. But yeah, I just felt like, so at the end we get like, basically, again, spoiler, Roma and Juliet like sacrifice themselves to kill the monster. They like blow it up, and they knew that they wouldn't have enough time to like get out of the way, so they're like, fuck it, we do this. They go boom, and then everybody's like, oh, they're dead, and then they like, their headstones, I think, like they're buried together, their headstones are next to each other. But then we get like a little epilogue with Kathleen and Roma's little sister, whose name Elisa, I think. Anyways, so now they're together, like, just, you know, Kathleen's now taking care of this child, I think she's a teenager at that point. But then you get a glimpse of Roma and Juliet because they actually survived. And then there's like a little spin-off a little spin-off book about Benedict and Marshall that I haven't read yet, but I think it's like something about like a train and then like trying to like do like a task for Roma because he's supposed to be dead. Yeah, I just kind of think that them being alive in the end, while I can totally understand like not wanting to kill like your babies, like as Chloe Gong, not wanting to kill them off completely, but I just like, I was wowed, like them like sacrificing themselves like really shot the star raking up for me, and the fact finding out that they were like still alive, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But that was a very long tangent that I went on, but I really wanted to talk about those two books. But that was my March. Let's talk about April, which was the worst reading month for me this year, and that is because it's another one of my videos that I did where I was, you know, cleaning out my bookshelves, reorganizing them before I moved, and I was like, I have a lot of physical TBR books that I haven't read before, you know, story of everyone's life, and I wanted to pick out of a jar and read a few. They were all horrible. They were all horrible. It put me into a little bit of a reading slump, I am not gonna lie to you. So the first one, the 13th book that I read, was Having and Being Had by Eula Bliss. So it was just kind of a lot of like short essays and discussions on capitalism and how like, well, capitalism and class from a woman that directly benefited from her class and position in society and capitalism. She was aware of it, but there was some weird stuff. Like I remember, what was it? I had written it down, that she had this weird take on not wearing helmets and seatbelts, like being a critique of the middle class and personal safety. I don't remember, but I remember thinking that that was like a really weird take. It felt like a book that I would have had to read for a college English class, and I don't have it with me to hold because I got rid of it. That one was 3 stars. Then the 14th book that I read this year was Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh. Another 3 stars. I really like the way that she writes, but I hate the things that she writes. And again, spoiler, Dora, please. She's making a little, let me see here. She's making a little bed in my books, but yeah, so spoiler, I should have known with the type of stuff that she writes and the fact that there was a dog, the dog was gonna die. The dog dies. Yeah, I don't know. It was just not my cup of tea. And then I tried to read Latvana this year, which I had really anticipated, but again, lovely writing style, but I just can't handle the content of that, which really sucks because Eileen, like, was my favorite book of, was one of my favorite books of, I want to say 2021. Oh my god, I don't even know anymore. Time passes. It was like 2 apartments ago. But yeah, so this book just didn't wow me, but one of my friends who's also a reader, she also likes her, so I ended up giving that book to her. So I hope she liked it. I also gave her short story collection to her as well because I didn't think I was gonna finish it. And then the last book that I read in April was Sputnik Sweetheart by Haruki Murakami. I gave this a 2.5 stars. And this cover is such a little catfish because I saw this, I think on Pinterest, and I was like, I love that book cover, I need to read it. And then randomly on Facebook Marketplace, I saw a guy selling like 6 of Murakami's books in this style. Bought it from him. It wasn't a big loss. I've said this in like multiple other videos, but I'm just mad now that I have all these Murakami books, but I also don't want to get rid of them. I don't know. I'm a hoarder. Like, it's hard for me to get rid of books. And that's my own issue. Oh, she's walking across. Oh, she slips. She just slipped on the books. Oh my god, Dora. But yeah, this is another instance where I love the writing, but for the love of God, can a lesbian woman exist without the male main character making his love for her problem? I wrote this down. This was my favorite line that I wrote in my notes. I didn't need 5 mentions of nipples in a 210-page book and to read about how a woman's arousal made her period come early. Next! Because what the hell, man? Yeah, that was Sputnik Sweetheart. So because April put me in such a reading slump, I only read one thing in May. And that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to read at least 1 book a month. I'm counting this. It was a play. It was No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre. I think that's how you say his name. Oh, I also gave the last book 2.5 stars. This book, play, I gave 3 stars. One of my resolutions this year is to get better at French. I really want to be able to hold a conversation in French, and I wish I spoke French so I could read the original version of this play. But, you know, read this during the worst reading slump of the year. Didn't leave a huge impression on me, but I think I generally kind of have that problem with translated literature. I wish I spoke another language so I could read things in their original form. That's what I want. That's what I want out of life. And that's why this year I'm really going to try to focus on learning French. But yeah, hell is other people. All right, let's talk about books 17 through 20 that I read in the month of June, and that was The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. And this was the logical next step after reading All for the Game, and I completely understand that. And I think if you are in that camp where you read All for the Game and you need more, this is going to scratch an itch for you. It's not going to completely fill the void of the All for the Game, you know, sized hole in your chest, but it's a good one. I definitely want to reread this book, or this series, this year. Even though most of it I feel like takes place in the summer, to me it feels like a fall read, an autumn read. So I think I'm gonna reread this sometime in the fall of this year. But I'm not gonna talk too much about it because I made 2 excruciatingly long reading vlogs of me, like B-roll of me reading it, giving reactions, and I tell you pretty much every single thing that happens. So you can find parts 1 and part 2 on my channel. Sorry if this is feeling like a huge, like, you know, plug, but I just don't want to, this video is already going to be so long, I just don't want to spend any more time talking about stuff I already spent 3 hours talking about. So love this book, and I am planning on reading the Dreamer trilogy at some point, even though I know that it makes Adam not look the greatest, but Ronan was my favorite character, so I feel like I have to read that series. So yes, this was a really good time. It took me a long time to read. It took me pretty much, I think that's why I only really read one book in May, because I was reading and recording this series. I always find that it takes me a lot longer to read a series when I'm recording something for it. But yeah, I can't remember the ratings that I gave those. Things are falling. But if you want to know, go watch those videos. The link again will probably be in the description, or just go to my channel. On to book 21, and the last book that I read in June, Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Again, not gonna get super into it. I did give this one 5 stars because I did talk a lot more about it in my Ali Hazelwood ranking video. But I read this book in 2 sittings, and the only reason that it's 2 sittings is because I took like a break to go play a game of chess. And ever since then, I have been obsessed with chess. For my birthday, I got a chess set. And not controversial, I don't think this is a controversial opinion, but an unpopular opinion is I sometimes prefer a closed door romance over an open door, and I really appreciated this. At the time of reading this was my favorite book, and then I got completely blown out of the water by her next 2 books that I'll briefly touch on. But yes, this book, so good. The literal only complaint that I had, which you're gonna think I'm crazy for this, was how young they were. But it's a YA book, so like obviously they're gonna be young. And I think if I had read this in high school, like, I think this is something that young girls would love, and I wish I'd been able to be in high school and read this. It was so good. I love it so much. She's just she knows what the girlies want. Let's talk about July. I'm really quickly gonna make I don't know if this is a disclaimer, but if you can hear like a weird like sizzling sound in the background, that is my radiator. The radiator is the loudest thing in the world. I cannot turn it off, and it wakes me up most nights, just like clanking, banging sounds. I gotta record this video today, so if you can hear it, I'm sorry. I can't turn it off. I love it here. But let's talk about what happened in July. We are now on book 22, and that was Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. And I gave this like 4.75 stars, and you guys are gonna think I'm crazy for this, but the only reason I took off 0.25 was that it was a little too spicy for me. Like, it was a little bit too spicy. It was so good, and again, go watch my Ali Hazelwood ranking video if you want to hear me talk more about it. But this was, I love Scarlett and Lucas. I was a little bit worried about moving away from like the women in STEM like situation Allie's known for and moving into more like student athletes, but I think it was done beautifully. What else is there to say about it? Oh, I read this on my flight from Boston to Dublin and I locked in. It's like a 5-ish hour flight, read it the entire flight, and I had the whole row to myself. Thank God, because I was like squirming. I was like, oh my God, like it was so good. It was so good. Honestly, July was my best reading month. It was, all the books were most of the books were bangers, but it was just such a good month, and I think it's because I started it. Actually, now that I'm realizing this, all of these books were read in a week, because that I read on my flight to Dublin, and that was like July 20 something. All of these were read within a week. That's insane. But I just thought that Lucas and Scarlett's traumas were so realistic, so well done, and then the fact that Lucas was basically her kind of best friend, first of all, fuck Penn, that's all I gotta say, best friend's like ex-boyfriend, and people didn't know that they broke up. I think that there was like realistic reasons for Scarlett not wanting to kind of like fully trust him and like fully give herself to him, like, and he rode so hard for her. Like, he did not play, like Lucas did not play about Scarlett, and I just loved him. I saw a TikTok recently from a creator I really like who said that she feels like they would not have realistically made it past college, like they would have broken up after the book ended. And for some reason this is like a couple that I don't agree. I do think their whole relationship, again, kind of same thing with like Not in Love, being based off of just like sexual attraction, and being based in like sex, is not my favorite thing in the world, but that's totally understandable. I'm a romance girl, like I want the romance part of it. I don't just want the smut a lot of the time, which is why I like closed door romances a lot. Not a lot more, but sometimes I just need like a closed door, you know? But yeah, I don't agree with that. I think that they're an amazing couple. Lucas does not play about Scarlett, and then, remember how I said I thought Check and Mate was my favorite book? This immediately dethroned it. So I'm gonna stop myself from talking about it more. But yeah. Book 23 that I read was Piranesi by Susanna Clark, and loved this book atmospherically. Like, I felt like I was transported into the labyrinth myself, and I could really see, like, I could envision it, I can imagine it. I loved it so much, and I felt like, so I would say like not 2/3, that's like a pretty far in. I didn't expect the direction that this took, and I was so pleasantly surprised. Like, I only gave it 4.75 stars, and I'm not sure why, but I genuinely think this was probably one of the best books that I read this year. If I'm more of like a romance girl, like that's why like my highest rated are the romance books and all the Ali Hazelwoods, but I think Piranesi is one that I would recommend to people, and if people were to really ask me like what's one of the best books you read this year, Piranesi is one of them. I just can't describe how unexpected that was for me, and I loved the way it ended. I know I'm being very vague, but I feel like I can't give more information if I want people to read it. Like, I really, really loved it, and I think a lot more people should read it, and that's one of the books that I think I might purchase. I saw this gorgeous cover that was like illustrated, and I think I kind of want to buy it. But it was really, really good. Book 24 that I read was Death Comes to Pemberly by P.D. James. I gave it a 4.0 stars, and you can pry my published Pride and Prejudice fanfiction out of my cold, dead hands. At this point, like, I feel like it's tradition that I read one at least once a year, so I need to figure out what I'm gonna read for this year, because they are just always consistently bangers. And the fact that, like, I think the other Bennett sister, like, another fanfiction that I don't know if it was in my last year's wrap up, but no, because I was still in school when I read it. Anyways, banger of a book. It's being made into, I think, either a movie or a TV series. Insane. This is, in my opinion, in my head, this is my unofficial, like, sequel to Pride and Prejudice. I just felt like it was the storyline was very realistic, and I think was kind of in line with something that Jane Austen might have written. With the caveat, the one thing I didn't really like was the nod to the characters from her other books. Like, at first, I'm gonna read what I wrote because I don't want to completely forget. So at first I liked the glimpse of the Elliots, right? Like, from Persuasion, like the Anne's dad and her older sister are mentioned. And I was like, oh, that is a believable tie-in. But then the Martins and the Knightleys came in, and I think the baby from, the bastard baby of Wickham's ended up getting adopted by the Martins, I want to say. I don't think it was the Knightleys, but I think it was the Martins. It was one of the two. And I was just like, there's too much happening. There's too many crossovers. But, you know, sometimes you're allowed to be self-indulgent. And I think the fact that Death Comes to Pemberly 100% was a fan fiction, like, I feel like she was, like, I am assuming P.D. James is a woman. I just think she was being very indulgent. And I love that for her. I just wasn't a fan of that part of it, but that's the only thing I wasn't a fan of. Otherwise, I thought it was so good. And if you like have like that itch of you want to, like, you need to scratch like a Regency era Jane Austen itch, but like you've read everything and you're like, I need more, I would recommend. I'd recommend it. It was good. Okay, here's my one miss of the month, and that was White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Only reason I'm keeping it is because I bought it when I was on vacation, and I like writing in like Manchester. Can you see it? Probably can't. It says Manchester 2025. Like, I physically wrote that, and it's kind of nice to like have like a books that I bought at another country. The only good line from this book is right here. My God, a whole minute of bliss. Is that really so little for the whole of a man's life? Only good line from this book. And this was expensive, low-key. Where is it? I think it was like, I can't remember how much it was, but then, oh yeah, it was £11, and then when you convert that, because of how crap the US currency is in England right now, like, oh wait, no, it was £5, and then because of like the conversion rate, it was $11, and I was like, this was $11. I should have paid in cash. I didn't, but whatever. Dare I say, disappointing and boring. I wish this was as life-changing as I expected it to be. I don't like dialogue-heavy books, and annoying. Annoying, sorry. And the last book that I read in July, book 26 of the year, was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. And again, this book I read on the flight from Dublin back to Boston, and I locked in. Like, there was a girl sitting next to me, and first of all, I asked for, when they were coming down with the beverage carts, I asked for some wine. They accidentally gave me like 2 big ones instead of just one, and I was like looking around, I was like, am I the only one who got 2? I was the only one who got 2. I don't know what they were doing, but they blessed me. So I got a little tipsy as I was reading Problematic Summer Romance. I locked in for, I'd say, like 2 straight hours, and then the meal came, and so me and the girl next to me started talking. She was so nice. She was like an au pair coming back to Boston to like visit her family, like the family that she had worked for. And she was like, I'm really impressed with how you've just been reading for the last 2 hours. I was like, thank you. Let me be tipsy and tell you all about Ali Hazelwood. And I told her about it, and I was kind of embarrassed after that. But then I ate my meal, locked back in and finished it. That one again was a little bit hard because it's like you get to some spicy scenes and I'm like subtly like turning away from her because I literally told her that. I was like, it does get a little bit spicy, which is why I'm embarrassed that I like kind of started rambling about this. So if you see me turning away, it's probably because I got to like a spicy scene and she thought that was really funny. But I just, you guys are gonna think I'm crazy. Again, go watch my video if you want to see more of a review of this. My only issue was how big the age gap between them was. And this is quite literally an age gap romance. So why is that my issue? Shouldn't be. It's what I signed up for. It's what she wrote about. But I was just like, I said this in like my Allie Hazelwood ranking video. I can't help but think like, oh, I think it was 15 years. When she's 50, he's 65. I'm like, girl, they are fictional characters. Don't even worry about that. But all of Allie's main, like, male protagonists, like, the love interest, hit so hard. The joke, like, that's a man written by a woman. Yeah, because no man could write a man as amazing as this. And his kinks literally just being like Maya existing in his home and like having kids with him. Me too, you vanilla king. But loved this book, and that's why July was my best reading month, because it was just banger after banger. Ignoring this, banger. Alright, let's talk about August. So the 27th book that I read this year was Ghostland by Colin Dickey. I love a good ghost story. I was really hoping that it would be more of the ghost stories themselves, but instead it was more of a history of how ghost stories come to be and how ghost stories are overly sensationalized. And bless me, but call me crazy, I like a sensationalized ghost story. So disappointing, I'd say. I give it 3.25 stars. Alright, let's really quickly, before my radiator gets too loud, talk about the 28th book that I read this year. And this was a reread because, again, it was for my Allie Hazelwood ranking video. And that was Love Theoretically. And for the longest time, this was my book. This was my favorite Allie Hazelwood book. It's what I would tell everybody, like, to read. I would say you have to read The Love Hypothesis first to get into the world, but then this is what you really want to be reading. Loved it so much. I remember the first time around, Jack is still like top tier for me. I just felt like the second time around reading it, I remember the first time I gave it 5 stars. Second time I gave it 4.75. There were just some things I didn't vibe with as much the second time around. The millennial humor just kind of irked me a little bit more. And I think just in the first time I read it, I could get past it. But Jack is still up there. I could rant about this book for a lot longer, but again, go watch my Allie Hazelwood ranking video. Alright everybody, quick scene change because it's been over an hour since I filmed that last clip and my radiator is still spitting and hissing and it is so loud. So we're in the living room now. I haven't really figured out the background for this, so sorry, this is last minute, but I need to keep talking about the books that I read this year. So, book 29 is up there with my favorite books of the year, and that is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. And oh, sorry. I get a lot of my book recommendations from Carrie Can Read. Love her channel, love her like vlogging channel too. And I think this is a recommendation from her. And I don't know how I thought it would go. I thought the concept was really cool because it's like basically the main character like lives in this like dead-end town. Her and her brother live in a motel because they're poor, and then she's obsessed with this like child's book or whatever, and like then you kind of find out that there's like some monster house vibes going on where there's a sentient house and a boy, he's a man, who is there, and his curse is that he has to protect the house. And it was just so good. It was so laugh out loud funny. This is one of the books that I had on Kindle that I was like, no, I immediately need a physical copy. I immediately went on Thrift Books. I immediately purchased a copy. I don't love the sprayed edges. That was not outlined to me, but again, it was Thrift Books, so you kind of get what you get with Thrift Books. But so good. It was so funny. Like, Opal, the main character, that was her name, right? I don't know why for a second I was confusing like Opal with like, oh, you can't see it, but I put the Raven voice back up, or the Raven cycle. I can't believe that just like caused me pause. But Opal is so hilarious, and the way that like she hates that she like falls in love with Arthur, like every time he's mentioned at the beginning, she has to mention how ugly she thinks he is. And you're like, okay, girl. It is really, like, setting aside All for the Game, setting aside the Allie Hazelwood, like, this and Piranesi are probably my 2 favorite of the year. And I just, what do I say besides, I'm just kind of going on, like, a tangent rant right now. It's so good, and I think that there's something so hilarious and magical about the fact that there is a sentient house that has these demons that come out from what is essentially hell, and they are from like a children's storybook, and all that is happening, but the main antagonist is a woman in a pantsuit with a bob. Hilarious, actually. But I loved that it's told in like a third person, and then there's like, I don't know if I'll be able to find any, but there's these little like footnotes about like, you can't really see it, but there's like little footnotes about the story that's being told. And I saw some people say that they thought that this was confusing. I thought it was really interesting, and I just love Opal that she is so convinced that she's a bad person, but she consistently tries to talk herself out of doing what is the right thing, and she cannot prevent herself from doing the right thing even though she thinks she's a bad person. And I saw people saying that the romance was unrealistic. I loved it. I loved every part of it. This is a good one. I would recommend this to so many people, and I've heard that Alex O'Hara has released a few other books that Carrie Can Read has read. I can't remember if she liked them or not. I feel like me and Carrie Can Read have like a very similar taste profile, and we have pretty similar opinions about some of the books we read. Obviously not like 100% of the time, but, and like I said, I think this was recommended by her, can't remember, but I loved this book. I needed to have the physical copy. This is another book, I think it takes place in the winter. It feels like a fall winter read. That's when I would recommend to read it. If you're a mood reader, I just kind of read things whenever the hell I want to. But that was Starling House. Book number 30 of the year was Love on the Brain by Allie Hazelwood, and this is the worst I've ever ranked a book, and that was 3.5 stars. I get more into this, again, in my Allie Hazelwood ranking video. I'm sure you're sick of hearing that. But I've said that her books always hit. This is the one exception. It was not good, in my opinion. I hated the main character. I felt like she was so shallow. Her issues, like, I just felt like Levi was such a good fleshed out individual, just like as a person, not even just as like a love interest, and just B fell so flat for me. And I don't want to get into like a huge rant, like I know I could if I wanted to. The entire plot was predictable, except for like when literally at the end, spoiler, he pulled a fucking gun on her. Not Levi, like the evil guy, like pulled a gun on B, and you're like, what's happening right now? But I was really disappointed in B as a character, especially when Allie just knows how to write a male love interest. But yeah, I would say whenever I'm talking to people and giving them recommendations and telling them that they should read Allie Hazelwood books, I usually tell them that they can skip this one. That's just my opinion. I recently saw like on a TikTok that people like in the comments talking, and a lot of people love B and they think that she's very like realistic, and I think that might just be a generational difference. I'm not a millennial, like I don't really connect with millennial things. I remember being a kid and thinking that the style of millennials, like I'm like, oh, I want to be like them, like the galaxy leggings, like the peplum tops, like the chunky statement necklaces. I always have this conversation with my coworkers where I'm like, that's chuggy, like explaining the concept of chuggy, because they don't think that chuggy is a word that really exists. They think I made it up. And they think that I'm making fun of them, and I'm like, no, like when I was a kid, like everybody, we wanted to be you guys, but it's just, I'm not a millennial like that, and she was too much for me. But some people love it, I just didn't. And then my 31st book that I read, it was a reread of The Love Hypothesis by Hazelwood. I listened to the audiobook, which I also listened to the audiobook for Problematic Summer Romance after I'd already read it. Again, just kind of trying to refresh my brain. The audiobook for Problematic Summer Romance is so much better than the audiobook for The Love Hypothesis, purely because in the Love Hypothesis one, it's one girl doing all the voices and doing like the deep voices and the accents, and it was just like too funny to be like serious, versus like in Problematic Summer Romance there was a girl voice and a boy and a guy voice, and I loved the girl's voice. But yeah, simply a classic. I compare all books to The Love Hypothesis because I think that's a really good benchmark for Hazelwood books. But yes, full review of this one in my other video, and that was August. Alright, let's talk about September. So September was a little bit of a bust of a reading month. I only read 2 things. I read Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. I give that 3 stars. I'm not hugely into poetry. I was a lot more when I was in high school. I think that there was pretty prose in this one, but that's about it. This I have filed under books that are perhaps not meant for me. And there was a weird Jeffrey Dahmer quote that I hated. I hated that was there. I don't know. I think I still have some Ocean Vuong, like On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and there was one more, I think he has one more, that are on my like TBR, and I feel like I'll give him another chance, but just this one wasn't for me. 3 stars. And then my 33rd book that I read of the year, which is hilarious that this is my 33rd book, considering that I'm currently filming a Read Percy Jackson with me for the first time, and seeing that I started this in September is actually kind of bonkers. But the 33rd book I read of the year was The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, and I give it a 4.0 stars. So again, like I said, I am working on a video that's like read this with me, so I'm not going to get super in-depth into the review for this, but I think I'm going to say this with the other books in the series that I've read this year, that with books, like middle grade books like these, there's definitely a nostalgia factor that I don't have because I did not read this when I was a kid. This is the first time I'm reading it ever, and while they're fun reads, I can't say that they're quick reads because I feel like my brain is constantly filling in, it's not even fixing grammar, but there's so many simple sentences, I'm like rewriting them how I would want them written, so I feel like it's actually taking me a lot longer. And there's like weird slapstick humor that really like takes you out of the immersion in it, and I really think like when I have kids, like I would love, like this is a series 100% Chloe approved that I would be more than happy to buy for my children and have them read, but it's just, I don't want to say it's not for me because I am really enjoying it, but I have, like currently right now I have a patient, I think she's 15, she's either 14 or 15, I think she's a freshman in high school. She loves Percy Jackson. Like she has merch, she's read I think like most of the books, like she's loving the TV series that's coming out and we're talking about it, but because she's 14 and she read it like when she was younger, she has like a much stronger connection to it than I do, which I feel this way towards something else that I'm going to talk about later, where I 100% see how reading these books at a certain time, like a certain age, like really impact how how you see them later in life. Like if I had read these when I was a kid and then I was rereading them now, then I can totally see how I would feel completely different. So more on that when I get to what kind of books I read as a kid that made me feel this way and have a stronger connection to. But that was my September. Alright, now on to October. The 34th book of the year that I read was Something in the Walls by Daisy Pierce, and I gave this a 4.0 stars. And I thought the plot of this was going to be predictable, and I'm kind of like in the middle of if I think it was or not. But I think I was pleasantly surprised by the ending. And there was a lot of loose ends left over, but overall I did enjoy it. I really wish that it had been more supernatural. Like it was very much like building and building and building towards this like supernatural occurrence. Just for spoilers, the actual villain at the end to be an old white man, which again, like I appreciate that. It feels very Scooby-Doo, you know, where it's like this, you expect like the supernatural build-up, and then of course it's just an old white man, it's just a rich white woman, you know. But I don't know, I was like a little disappointed with the fact that we didn't really get conclusion to the supernatural stuff that had happened. But a pedophile got what was coming to him. So, you know, that's a win. That's something to snap over. But that was my 34th book of the year. Okay, book 35 of the year was It Lasts Forever and Then It's Over by Anne DeMarkin. 3 stars. This goes into the same category that Alone with You in the Ether goes into, where I, for some reason, went into it expecting it to be life-changing, and expecting it to be like, I don't know what I was expecting. I expected to deeply connect with it on some level that I just simply didn't. Every time I read literary or speculative fiction, I always say to myself, maybe the genre just isn't for me. And then last night I was watching I think it was Plant-Based Bride video about like how to engage critically with what you're reading, and that made me realize I just think that I'm not engaging critically with the literary fiction that I'm reading. There were some good lines in this book, but you know, the nonsensical plot took me out of the exploration of grief that I was expecting. I don't know. Basically, it's just about like a post-apocalyptic world where our main character is a zombie, and you know that I expected a lot more from the perspective of her grieving for the life that she used to have and the people that she used to love. And then there's like this whole plot point where she finds a dead crow that she like buries inside of herself, and she carries it with her, like, so obviously a metaphor for grief. But I just felt it wasn't saying enough for me. I feel like that was a pretty bad review, but I don't know how else to go about it. So I hope that made sense to somebody. Anyways, taking a complete shift from that, we have book 36, Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. This one I enjoyed slightly more than the first book, and I will talk about that more, especially I think the video for this guy, or for me reading the Percy Jackson series, is either going up directly after this one, so 2 weeks after this video, or a month from now, so hopefully you guys will be able to see my thoughts about this soon. But I just really think I'm lacking the nostalgia factor that a lot of people have with the Percy Jackson series, because I know one of my friends, like, I follow her on Storygraph, and she was giving these 5 stars, and I know it's a reread for her. And then I brought this book to work, like my part-time job, and I had it sitting in the side stand, and one of my coworkers was like, I'm so jealous that you get to read that for the first time. And so we got in this whole discussion about like how she has more of a connection to it than I do. But I do notice that as you read the books, the writing gets better. The writing gets better as you go, which makes sense. Because I feel like I remember, like, I read I don't have like a great recollection of it, but I read Harry Potter series when I was a kid with my grandma, with Nana, and I feel like I remember the difference between the writing in the first book to the writing in the last book had like changed drastically from what I remember. I have not read it since I was a very small child, but yes, I think it had slightly matured, which I was hoping that it would, but it still took me a really long time to get through. And I think it's just because like this is kind of on the back burner where I have to like take notes to review it and talk about it, and I'm reading it at the same time that I'm reading a bunch of other books. So I don't think that's a failing of the series. I am really enjoying the series. I will say that. I don't want to spoil until I get to the next. Okay, I'll spoil. I'm on the 4th book right now, and I'm like every book gets better and better for what's happening, and how the writing style is. But so I don't hate it. I am really enjoying it. It's just taking me way longer to get through than I thought it would. Like I thought this was gonna take me like maximum a month to record, and these books I borrowed them from a coworker, so I'm gonna have to give her the full box set back. Like thank God she doesn't have like kids or anything that like are like, girl, where are our books, you know? But yes, moving on. Oh my God. Okay, so so the next book that I'm gonna talk about, I can talk about it as much as I want. Well, let me just introduce it really quickly. The book that I'm now gonna scream about is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Oh my God. I was so stupid. I recorded the Ali Hazelwood ranking video literal days before this book came out, and I had thought to myself like, oh, I could wait and like read this and then make that video. But I was like, you know, I was trying to be more consistent last year. I was like, I want to post a video every 2 weeks. I gotta record this one now, just do it, whatever. And I was convinced that I was not gonna read this book the day it came out. I like subscribed to Ali's Substack, and I got like the notification that there were different editions, and I folded immediately. I looked through the cover art. I went, I want that one. I literally ordered it from Target, and then immediately like an hour later left work, went to Target and picked it up and started it. This book, I should have waited. This probably would have dethroned all the other books, which is so interesting to me because I liked Bride. I did not like it as much as I liked Mate. First of all, not even first of all, because I'm pretty deep into this review already, but I want to take a second for this book. Obviously, if you guys know, this is not the Target exclusive one. The Target exclusive one is in my room because I did indeed buy it for the fan art and because it's blue, I believe. I honestly can't remember, but the reason this is so special is because my friend Meg knows me so well. I randomly got a package in the mail and I was like, oh my gosh, what's this? It's from my friend, my best friend back home. Wait. Can you see that? It's a signed copy. It is, she knows me so well. Like, genuinely, this is one of the best gifts I've received in a really long time. Like, are you kidding me? I need a second because when I opened it, I immediately like freaked out. Like, Meg, if you're watching this, which I feel like you probably are, you typically watch my videos, you are such a real one. This was an amazing gift and it's like one of my prized possessions. I actually don't have that many signed books. I have this by Ali Hazelwood. I have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. And I have The Raven Boys, like the graphic novel signed by Maggie Stiefvater. And like prized possessions. I'm not even joking. Like, oh my God. Sorry, that was just like a really long time of me freaking out about this. Let's actually get into the review of why I loved it. she just, like, Miss Hazelwood just completely outdoes herself every single time. The banter between these two, like, for example, the very first scene where Cohen saves Serena from getting attacked by that other wolf that's been chasing her. The banter that the two are having, like, back and forth, like, it's so good. And I know she did this in Bride, but at the very beginning of each chapter, like, hello, where is it? She, like, the chapters are always told from the female's point of view, but, and, like, you can't really tell, but, like, in italics, there's, like, a scene told from the guy's point of view. Oh my god. And let me just say, I'm not a stranger to ABO. I just simply am not. That's probably a little bit of TMI, but we're getting open on this channel. I'm not a stranger to ABO at all. From the moment Serena starts talking about how she's dying, girl, we know what you are, and that's you're going into heat. This is what I wrote down. I said the self-isolation because she's dying when really she has need to be dick down-itis. It's amazing. I knew it. I could smell it from a mile away. And again, I saw a TikTok today that was like, not like in no universe would I have thought that that's what was happening. I was like, well, babes, now you've been opened up to this. It's so good. I kind of wish Cohen had been a little bit more, what's the word for it? I don't know. I felt like when he found out that she only had 6 months to live, I was hoping for like a much more dramatic like reveal, which was like, let me give an example. Like, so she was told that she probably had like 6 months to live, I think it was, and then she goes and isolates for a few months of that, and so then sorry, somebody just like stopped on a landing outside my apartment, and I know they could hear me talking. Anyways, but she isolates for a few months of that, and then so that means that her time to live was completely like cut in half, right? And he was just like, I'm gonna help you live. Could he have freaked out like a little bit more? Like, I wanted him to be pissed at her for hiding that from him, and that part fell a little bit flat. But listen, the fact that they like legally cannot so it's funny but good. It was like, that is hilarious, but it's so silly but so good. And this was not like a cohesive review like I wanted it to be, because I'm just like overwhelmed with how much I loved it. All I gotta say is, I've said this before when I talked about Bride last year, I was a Wattpad girl. I've mentioned that in this video. I feel like when peak like middle school ages, that was like 2012 to 2014 is when I was in middle school. I would say that you were a Larry, like One Direction fanfiction, not even just Larry, but like all the boys. You were a One Direction or Five Sauce fanfiction person. You were a My Life with the Walter Boys, like that type of like story person, where a girl has to live with a bunch of boys situation. Or you were one of the vampire werewolf girls, and I was a werewolf girl. Yeah. All I gotta say is, Meg, you killed it with this gift. Like, genuinely, I wish I was better at giving gifts, because the gifts that people give me just are peak. And I'm such a bad gift giver compared to that. And listen, if you just go read it, just give it a chance. Everybody needs to go read that book. Not everybody, actually. Listen, there's some things that I cannot be responsible for if you learn about. But that was my very version of a review for the 37th book I read this year, which was Mate. Moving on to November, I read my 38th book of the year, which was House of Salt and Sorrow by Erin A. Craig, and I gave this a 4.25 stars. If I was to sum it up, I would say that this is a horror retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, where you descend into madness with the main character. I was suspicious of literally everybody in the series. I was suspicious of. I was like, you did it, you did it, you did it. I did guess who the villain ended up being, and that is only because I was suspicious of everybody. Like, that person, like, I don't even want to give too many spoilers for this, because I did really enjoy this book. I loved the atmosphere, but I did have my own issues with it where, let's see, I would say even though I guessed who had done it, like I said, that was only because I was suspicious of everyone. I didn't expect the circumstances around it. That was pleasantly surprising. I just felt like there was something off about the pacing of the novel. That was kind of one of my main complaints. The love story was very, I don't know. Okay, I think I'm gonna say, like, I am gonna talk about spoilers kind of going forward, but I would, if that line of the 12 Dancing Princesses horror retelling interests you at all, stop listening to me and go read the book, because it is so atmospherically beautiful and interesting. But I'm going to talk about now, like, with spoilers, what I wasn't a fan of. But I felt like the romance was very much like an insta-love type of romance, especially because you find out that not a lot, but like some of the interactions they had at the beginning, he wasn't actually there for. So then with the little development that they get, you then take away more of it, you know, because that wasn't actually him. And the love interest, Cassian, he was very much giving Mr. Wickham vibes to me, but I think that's because I was suspicious of everybody. There was a lot of lore drop and over-explaining what was actually going on, because the plot was very convoluted, and kind of near the end, it was added that the gods that they worshipped were actually, like, real and would drop in from time to time, which it was mentioned briefly at the beginning, just like a very sprinkling of it, but then it becomes like huge at the end, and I felt like it just didn't feel seamless to me. But there were a lot of twists and turns that made me give this like a high-ish ranking. And Cassius, that's what his name was. Like, the number one, like, again, this is a major spoiler, was the fact that Fisher had been dead for weeks, even though he had been with Annalie and her family for weeks. And he was like, and the fact that, like, they could manipulate, like, the evil whatever could manipulate people's perceptions. So Fisher was just like a fucking meat puppet for the last few weeks, like his dead body, and they just like did not notice. Oh my god, that was an insane reveal to me. And I felt like there was a lot that this book left to be desired. Like, I think, in my opinion, it could have used another round of editing passes, but just in the way that I just felt like the pacing was off. Like, I would have loved to root for Annalie and Cassius, but it just felt like it just happened much too quickly, and it just didn't do it for me. But genuinely, like, very fun. I think if anyone's on the fence about reading this, even though I did just give a bunch of spoilers, read the first chapter and tell me that is not an insane opening chapter. Like, I read that, like, I was waiting for Leve to go on at her concert. Like, it was the break between Suki Waterhouse and Leve, and I'm like on my phone, and I had opened it up just because, like, when you're tapping on your phone, and I started reading it, and I got so pulled in. My friend was like, "Are you really reading right now at a concert?" Yeah, I was, because I was so pulled in. It's beautifully written. I just feel like it's just the prose. There's something, not the prose. The prose was beautiful. It's the pacing. There's something just about the pacing that felt really off to me, but very much recommend that book. The 39th book that I read this year was The Luckiest Lady in London by Sherry Thomas, and I gave this a 4.0 stars. I did another video recently and it was ranking the like book boyfriends that I had read of the year, or just like in general ranking book boyfriends of like most of the books I read since I started my reading journey again. And let me just say, Felix, this male lead, I want to, oh, this boy. Let's talk about the good. So the good part about it is that the banter between these two is insane. And the spicy bits between the two are so good, but there was one specific scene, that it pissed me off. Like I couldn't get over it. Like I wanted the main character to like grovel way more than he did. So the premise of this is that basically the female lead she's a fortune hunter and she's beautiful, she's kind, but she has to support her family in some way, right? Like you gotta respect it. So she has her sights set on some men that she's like, I think these guys are gonna be perfect, they're gonna be great. And then Felix, who has decided that he's never gonna fall in love, never gonna marry, because, you know, of course he has trauma of his parents. Like, actually, I feel like his trauma was like pretty decent, but he knew that his parents like weren't in love and they like basically tortured each other like his whole life, and that's how he learned how to manipulate people. And in the end, like, he sees that she's a fortune hunter, but he's like really interested about it because she's not hiding it. She's like, okay, well, dude, I gotta marry somebody, so either help me with them or move along. And he ends up like proposing, so they get married really early on in the book. And like I said, the banter's hilarious, like it's so good. But then I can't even remember what leads to like them getting into a fight, but they get into a fight. So again, for spoilers, I'm gonna talk about what he does that pissed me off so much. So basically, I think maybe he realizes that he's falling in love with her. I really can't remember. But she's still like they sleep together and she's like, oh my god, like, hey bae. And they invite a bunch of people over to to stay with them and show like that they're newlyweds and that they are like a perfect couple. And so he starts acting really weird towards her, even though she like is like, I thought we were kind of falling in love, I don't know what's gonna happen. And so she wants to be with her man. She still doesn't realize that anything's like super wrong. And then they go into the library and she's like, dude, touch me, like, come on. And so he like, for my parents to listen to this part, he like fingers her. And then she's like, oh my god, this is so great. And then when he's done, he wipes off his hands with a handkerchief and throws it away in the wastebasket and is like, ew. I was gagged. I was like, no fucking way he just did that. And then of course that's when she realizes, oh, something's amiss, something's wrong, right? And so then they start like this like mini war between each other. Of course he like, you know, he grovels like a little bit, but I don't know, I just wanted like a reveal of something, like he had like gone back and gotten the handkerchief and like kept it with him or something. I don't know, I don't know why I'm so like aggressively upset about that, but I am just aggressively upset about that. But yeah, that was my 39th book I read of the year, 4 stars. I did recommend it to somebody because I was like, I actually recommended it to 2 people that were like in a reading slump who like those types of books. I'm like, girl, you gotta read it. It'll get you going. Like, it'll get you out of that reading slump, I promise. Okay, next is The Titan's Curse by Rick Riordan. And this one so far has been my favorite because again, I am on book 4. It's a 4.5 stars. It had a lot of unexpected plot points that I didn't predict. The writing's still not up to my standard, but it's a middle grade book. Like, what do I expect? 100% forgiven, because again, he was writing this for middle schoolers and I'm 26. So obviously we don't have like the same, you know what I mean. But can I just say, I did not expect actual deaths to occur. Multiple deaths occurred in this. And like the first time like one of the deaths occurred, I went to my little patient. I was like, did they actually die? And she was like, uh-huh. I was like, what the heck? So that was a little bit dark for, I remember when I first started reading this book, I told her I was on it and she's like, oh, I think that's the sad one. What's sad about it, girl? The sad thing about it is that 2 people die and there's one on-screen death, like that, like the person ends up actually being alive. But I'm like, that's still crazy. Like those kids still basically witnessed a death, even though he wasn't actually dead, you know what I mean? But this one was a really good book. So I am on the 4th book right now, like the Battle of the Labyrinth, I believe. And I'm not sure how I feel. I think it's the writing and the story is getting better, but I'm still gonna kind of consider, I think this one so far has been my favorite. So that was the 40th book that I read this year. 4.5 stars. And then the last book that I read of November, my 41st book of the year, was Chlorine by Jade Song, and I gave this a 4.0 stars. And I think out of all the lit fic that I read this year, like this was probably my favorite. I typically find main characters in lit fic unlikable, and I'm gonna be honest, I find the writing in a lot of them challenging to interpret. But I liked both. I like the writing and I like the character. I think part of me did engage a little bit more critically with this book than I did with the other lit fic that I read this year, because I felt like this had, even though the ending still is like up in the air to me, and if you read it you're like, oh, like how do you think that this is the most sensical plot? I just felt like this had an actual plot. Had an actual plot that I could follow with. I'm still very confused, like I said, about the ending, and I'm not sure if it is more magical realism than lit fic. But it had really interesting themes of like societal pressures of young athletes, and like isolation and alienation of first-gen immigrants or first-gen Americans, and I really enjoyed it. So would recommend. Sorry, that was gross. And finally, we are on to December, which is my favorite month that we're going to talk about, because this month I read Heated Rivalry in the Long Game. So I watched the first 3 episodes of Heated Rivalry with my friend Slem and said, I immediately need to know what's gonna happen next, what's gonna occur. So from the in between episode 3 and episode 4 coming out, I read Heated Rivalry and The Long Game. In each of them I read in less than a day, and for one of them I was at work for 12 hours. That's how quickly I consumed these books. I will say, so I gave Heated Rivalry, the first one, I gave it a 4.75 stars, but I wanted to give it a 5 stars, but I couldn't in good conscience give a book that was 10% plot and 90% smut I just couldn't give that a 5 stars, even though I enjoyed it so much. It was actually just what I needed, and I think like after reading, like, you know, I've been reading like the kids book, like Percy Jackson series for a while. Chlorine was good, but it was still like, you know, it didn't feel, I don't know how to describe it. Like, you know, when you read a book and it makes you hungry for more books, like that's what Heated Rivalry made me. Like Chlorine, I was kind of just like, okay, but this made me want to consume more, which is why I gave it such a high rating. I really enjoyed how I would recommend it to a person is I would say, if you like, so watch Heated Rivalry. If you like it, then go read the book and then rewatch it, because I think watching the series going in completely blind was so beautiful. Like, or at least watching those first 3 episodes. I wish I'd watched the full season, just going in completely blind. But I think then, because then what I did is I read the book and then I watched the whole series again with another friend, and I had such a different perspective, because then you kind of see like more of their inner workings, because it's told from both of their POV, which I would say I think Heated Rivalry is more of a Shane focused book, and then The Long Game is more of an Ilya focused book, and that's how season 1 felt. Season 1 felt it was more Shane heavy, like Shane focused. I think that's mostly because we got to see like more of what happened with like Rose Landry and all that stuff, versus like, I guess we did also get Ilya and his family, but that's like not in the book really. But I loved it. Then we go into The Long Game. So I only read books 2 and 6 of the series. I'm unsure if I'm gonna read the rest of the series. I've been at least thinking about reading Troy and Harris's book, because I've heard that that one's really good. There was a lot more plot in The Long Game, which I gave 4 stars, which now that the more that I sit on it, I want to give Heated Rivalry a few less stars and The Long Game more stars, but there's reasons. Much more plot this time. I feel like I could have done without reading The Long Game, except for the plane scene. The plane scene, oh my god, it was so good. Okay, so spoilers going on, but the fact that like Shane might never have like, I just can't describe how delicious like the entirety of that plot line occurring was. The fact that Ilya knows that he needs to say something to Shane, but he doesn't have like, he can't text him, so he DMs this man, and he DMs him like, you basically like, even now in my like moments, in my last moments, I'm thinking of you. The fact that those would have been like Ilya's last words to Shane, and Shane doesn't even get on his Instagram a lot, and then when Shane goes to Ilya's Instagram and he sees that it's literally just little snippets of their life together, even though they can't share that with the world. I saw an edit that was like, you know the song like that's like a drag path like etched in like the 21 Pilots song that's like, I don't think it's out yet, but everyone's using it for like edits and stuff. Oh my god. And so Shane sees that, and then like, if you don't know, okay, this is kind of what sucks about season 1, is that there's no dock at, probably because they had like a really tiny budget, you know, but there's supposed to be a dock where instead of Shane sitting on the rock, Shane's sitting on the dock, like as Ilya's like swimming around or whatever. And then Ilya says that if he were to ever propose to Shane, he would put 1 billion candles on the dock and then he would propose. And Shane makes a joke about that being like a fire hazard, right? And then, so this whole thing happens with Ilya and like the plane almost crashing. And so Ilya comes home and Shane has driven the 2 hours from Montreal to be in Ottawa when Ilya gets home. And when he gets home, he goes into the living room and there's a bunch of candles, and Shane proposes because he's like, I couldn't get it out of my head that if you had died, like I wouldn't have been able to make any decisions about your funeral. I wouldn't have been able to be openly grieving there. I wouldn't have been able to hide the fact that I was grieving your death. And so good. So you know what? Maybe I would read that. That entire scene made it so worth it to me. I also really, really, really loved seeing Ilya, this is gonna sound bad, but seeing Ilya struggles with his mental health, because it was so realistic. And like, just like, I like how he started seeing the Russian speaking therapist, and it was so healing for him to be able to speak like his native language to somebody who would understand. And I just felt like what I really was sad is that Shane clearly had an eating disorder that he was struggling with throughout the entire book, and that never got a clear resolution, in my opinion, because like all the stuff goes down with Montreal. Fuck the Montreal Voyagers, by the way. I think they're the Metros in the TV series, but they did Shane so dirty at the end, which makes me so scared to watch season 2, because they do him dirty they like, oh my god, the way that they're like, they think that he threw the game to let Ilya win when he has been in a situationship with this man for 10 years and won them multiple Stanley Cups in that time. Ooh, don't piss me off. But I felt like Shane didn't get that resolution. Like, he doesn't really get a happy ending. Like, Ilya gets the happiest ending, and Shane just kind of gets fucked over, even though in the end he gets to move to Ottawa and like be on the same team as his husband. But then he also doesn't get his eating disorder figured out, because when all that goes down with like his team turning their backs on him, he's just like, fuck it, I'm having a hamburger. Fuck it, I'm having a beer. You know what I mean? And I just felt like justice was not done to him. And I could go on forever, but I also found like this specific series, like I felt like the conflict and the reason they can't be together just is so much more realistic than so many of the other books that I have read. And I understand why the conflict went on for over a decade, but, and then they, like, their arguments are so realistic. Oh, I could go on about this forever. There's also a scene where they're arguing and Ilya's like, would you choose me over hockey? And Shane bites back with, well, would you? And Ilya's like, I already did, because he completely left Boston, which was an amazing team that got multiple Stanley Cups, for a crappy team in Ottawa where they barely ever win, just because he wanted to be with Shane. And I had seen this take, which I agree. I don't think Ilya likes hockey very much. I think it was like his escape from his family, and it's just something that he was like naturally good at, because I get the feeling that it's like that where Shane or Ilya is like naturally good at it, but Shane has to work for it, if that makes sense. Even though they're both the best, and I just don't think hockey's as fulfilling for Ilya as it is. And I really like the headcanon, or yeah, like that even though their plan was to retire at the same time, I like the idea that Ilya retires first and becomes a wag. But yeah. I've been filming this video for a very long time, and I just waxed poetic about Heated Rivalry for 10 minutes, but that injected fun back into my life. Like, I am obsessed with Connor's story, obsessed with Hudson. I'm so glad that those two were casted for this, because I feel like this opens the opportunity for them to do so many more things. And the world needed access to Connor's story, is all I'll say. But I need a second. I need to recharge after that. So we're gonna be turning the energy way down for just a split second, because the 44th book that I read of the year was Who Will Run the Frog Hospital, and I gave that 4 stars. Let's just talk about this really quickly. Another lit fic book, basically just about this girl who, it's like her telling it from when she's a middle-aged woman, just telling a story about her girlhood, right? And I feel like that's what a lot of lit fic is, actually. I think it's hard to describe why I liked it so much, but there's something about reading this on the plane ride home back from my small town that, you know, back to the life that I created for myself, that just felt like a nod of acknowledgement to me. And I really enjoyed that. But I find a little bit of issue, I think, with how most of the lit fic that's told from a woman's point of view. I feel like this is a very common, I don't want to call it trope, but it's a very common theme of a woman telling a story about when she was younger. And almost always in her current timeline, she's in an unhappy marriage with a boring man. And I feel like I do understand why that's so common, but at the same time, it's like it's getting a little bit repetitive for me. But I enjoyed it. It was good. I would say, I don't know, I'd say maybe I'd recommend Chlorine to people. I'm on the fence if I would recommend this one, but it was really funny going from reading, like, my energy with reading Heated Rivalry The Long Game. And then I was just like so like hungry for something to read that my hold for this had come in, and I read it, and I again read it straight through on a plane ride. And I genuinely think, like, my opinion about like the best way to like the best ways to consume media, I think the best way to consume a TV show is on the couch with your friend. Like, you can't consume a TV show, in my opinion, without another person next to you that you can then discuss what has happened. I think that all music should be listened to on a car ride at nighttime. I think there's something about that that just makes makes the notes stand out more. I don't know. And I think that the best way to consume a book is on an airplane, where you have not paid for Wi-Fi. So it's either read the book or scroll through your photo album on your phone. But yeah, so again, a lot of the books that I read, I devoured because I was on some form of public transportation, and it was either that or scroll mindlessly on my phone. So that was a 44th book that I read this year. And I need to gather energy for what I'm about to talk about next, so give me a second. All right, now's the moment you've all been waiting for. This is the finale, the last books that I read of 2025. And the way that these books just mean so much for me. So this was a reread, and I normally don't talk a lot about the books when it's a reread. I need to talk about these, okay? Let's just kind of show you what I guess are technically books 45 and 46, but I think I'm just gonna count them as 45 because I read Check Please. These books are so important to me. And you know how I said earlier that I think if I had read certain other books at a certain point in time in my life, it would have changed the trajectory. These books changed the trajectory of my life. And let me explain to you why. This is classic Chloe lore that I think a lot of my friends know, but sometimes I'll occasionally drop it to people, like drop this piece of lore and they're like, what? But this is the truth of my life. When I was a wee little lass on Tumblr, I randomly stumbled upon this like Q&A style post where it was these characters from a comic book, or it was like these drawings of characters, and they were answering. I very specifically remember it was near Halloween. I want to say either my freshman or sophomore year of high school, and I could probably go back and find the exact one, but I remember they were talking about how their house was haunted by the spirits of two girls from like the 80s or something. And I was like, what is this all about? And that is how I was introduced to the world of Check Please. So ever since then, I remember she would update, like the author Ngozi Ukazu, she would update, I want to say once a week. I don't think it was every 2 weeks because I was like pretty locked in to like reading this, like the comic as soon as it came out. But along with waiting for the comics to come out every time that they did, I was engaging with the fandom. She had so much content where they were answering Q&As. I followed the Twitter, right? And it was just like, it was a different experience to be following along as the episodes were being released. And not only that, but just like getting to interact with her, like as the characters, getting to interact with all the other people who loved it. But basically that happened when I was early in high school. So what did I decide to start doing? I decided to start watching actual hockey. And hockey does not exist in Kansas. Like, I think now Topeka might have like a team. I'm not really sure because I haven't lived there since I was 18. But it just like nobody cared about hockey. So randomly, I decided that I wanted to start watching hockey, and I, for some reason, chose the Pens as my team. I can't remember exactly why. There might have been multiple factors. I I think what it ended up being is I kind of really wanted to go to Penn State, so I was like, oh, let me just like their hockey team too. So I started watching like actual real life hockey, and because I started watching actual real life hockey, I said to myself, I want to go to a college that has hockey. So I tried looking for colleges that had both hockey and football, hence wanting to go to Penn State, but I also knew I wanted to be a physical therapist. And I also remember looking up like college hockey teams on YouTube, and both Penn State and BU had these like documentaries about their current hockey teams. And so then that's why I started like watching or like looking in, that's why I started looking into colleges, like started looking into Penn State and BU, because they both had hockey teams, and Penn State had a pre-PT track. I think I would have gone for kinesiology, but BU had the 6-year program. So I was accepted to both universities, and I ended up choosing to go to BU because they had the 6-year PT program, which would have been better in the long run, and they ended up giving me more money. But literally finding that post on Tumblr as a 14, 15-year-old literally led to me living in Boston, which is insane, and I don't know if I should be admitting that online, but the butterfly effect. So these mean literally so much to me that I was supposed to be at a cabin today and this week, but I actually came down with the super flu, and this is the first day I've been able to not be bedridden all week. So that's neither here nor there, but as I was feeling sorry for myself on New Year's Eve, I was like, let me do something that's gonna make me happy. So I reread these books. So technically, honestly, this would have been the first book that I read in 2026 because I finished it at like 1 in the morning, but I'm not counting it as that. They mean so much to me. It is so funny because my favorite character is Dex, right? And when I was convinced that Dex and Nursey were in love, and you know what? I'm still a little convinced. But it's so funny because let me find the like scene. It's so funny to me because rereading this, like Dex and Nursey do not have a lot of screen time. Like they're there, but I remember every time I saw Dex, I was like, oh, there he is. And this like specific, like if you can see it, this is like after they lose one of the championships and everybody's really sad. And so like here's Dex and there's Nursey behind him. And then in this panel, you can see that somebody has their hand on Dex's back. And I was like, it's Nursey! I was crazy, but I was genuinely obsessed with them. Like, I remember where I was when the Kiss chapter came out, the first Kiss chapter, and then the second Kiss chapter. Like, you know, if you've read these, you know what the first one is, you know what the second one is. But I remember where I was when those were released. It's hard to describe. Like, reading it was so nostalgic, and I really feel like it turns me into, like, not a child, but like a teenage girl reading this. But I think I read the first copy so many times because like when I was sad in high school, I would just start the comic over from the beginning because it was so good that I've probably read I've probably read year 1, 2, and 3 a ton of times. Year 4 was a little fuzzier. Like, for example, when Nursey and Dex like had the same room and then like Dex like moves into the basement, it was so funny to me. Like when the coin lands on its side, I remember just being so tickled, and it just like always felt like the author was just like kind of like not laughing at us, but like laughing with us, where she's like, that's hilarious. I could totally make the characters do that because I'm the author, right? And I remember where I was when that chapter came out, but I'd completely like forgotten about like Waffles, Bully, and Lewis. Like I'd completely forgotten about them. I remember when we got Whiskey and Foxtrot, when we got Tango and Whiskey, everybody was like, oh my god, the Lax Bro is gonna be Foxtrot. because, you know, those three have to come together. And then when they hire the new manager and they call her Ford, everybody was like, oh man. But then later they call her Foxtrot, and you're like, it's so good. Like, I'm just like screaming. Like, this is not a review, this is just me ranting about how much I love this series, but it is just so good. And I wanted to, what really made me want to reread these, besides just feeling sorry for myself, was Ngozi Ukazu on TikTok recently started posting. And when I tell you, when her profile came across my desk, sat, and she released that a year 5 is going to be coming out. And when I tell you, I'm insane. She announced that it had been like auctioned for TV, which honestly, I think an animated series is probably better than a real life series. That's my own opinion on it. But she also announced that there's gonna be the year 5, and in the announcement that she included, she said that she wants to tell a story of acceptance that's really important to her. And then there's a screen, like the phone, and it's basically somebody sending Biddy, like talking to Biddy about like cooking, and like, oh, it's going in the oven now, like I'll let you know how it goes. I want it to be Dex so damn bad. I want it to be him, like, told from his point of view so badly. And I remember that was part of like some of the extra content, is that Biddy was teaching Dex how to bake, and I need it so badly. You have no idea. But also part of me thinks that maybe it's gonna be Whiskey, just because I feel like his story was very unfinished, because at one point Biddy catches Whiskey making out with a dude, and then Whiskey freaks out on him, and he does not like Biddy, does not want to talk to him. But then at the end, Biddy gives Whiskey his dibs, and Whiskey's like, thanks for like keeping my secret to yourself. So part of me thinks that's also an option. But then, now we're getting in my like crazy fan theories. Then somebody had commented on one of Ngozi Ukazu's TikToks that was like, saying like, please give us Nursey Dex, and snaps, and she said, well, like something along the lines of, what does it mean to be partners with someone romantically, platonically, after being by their side, the D-man, for 3 years? Give it to me. I at least know that Dex is the captain for like the next year, which is so sweet. Like, oh my god, I'm drained. I'm drained because I am so excited. I have been telling everybody that I am bringing the feral energy that I had in 2016 as a 16-year-old, a sophomore/junior in high school. I'm bringing that energy into 2026. This is going to be my most unhinged year yet, and I genuinely think it's going to be because year 5's coming out. We're getting more like heated rivalry, just like unleash something in me, and this year I'm going crazy. That is what I've decided. Obviously, if you've stuck around for this long, you've been warned. So thank you so much for following along with me, just kind of ranting, talking about all these books that I've read. I hope that you guys also had a very productive reading 2025. If you didn't, I hope you take maybe some of these books that I was talking about and you read them in 2026. But no matter what, I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.